feel that way about Holden than you and I felt. I think they're more likely to see him as whiny, as entitled, as you know, a rich kid with rich kid problems, whose problems are therefore not truly legitimate. But I always want to grab those kids, and I mean this in a nice way. I want to grab them like firmly by the shoulders, and I want to say to them, you are also self-obsessed and self-indulgent, and you also have problems that are not the most dramatic, important problems in human history, but they are still real, they are still important, they still matter, they, you know, they are still, you know, they demand your attention, and your pain is real, and I think Holden's pain is real too. I don't know what the question was because I feel so passionately about Catcher in the Rye and defending it and I've forgotten. But yes, I identified with him. And then now as an adult, of course, you read that book, and back then I thought it was so kind of badass and cool, and now I read it and it's like the saddest book in the world.
I'm so glad you said that. I read it after Salinger died, I reread it, and I felt like, you know, you're watching a kid whose world gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
Oh, it's awful.
At the end, he has no other recourse except to sleep on the bench in the waiting room at Grand Central Station. I mean, it's a tragedy.
It's horribly, horribly sad. I find that all the books that I thought were funny and clever and cool when I was a teenager turned out like Slaughterhouse-Five. I just reread that because we're teaching it in Crash Course Literature, and I just reread it, and I was like, this book that I once thought was hilarious is incredibly sad. Like, it's one of the saddest books I've ever read.
It's brutal.
It's horrible. Like, how did I read that? And I was like, da, 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 da.
You know, it's the and so it goes thing.
I know,
You think it's a toss-off, but really what it's saying is like, you're screwed either way.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. You're gonna die.
On the Road was another one. I don't know if that was a touchdown book for you.
Yeah,
you read it, the older you get, when you read it, you realize really how lost those characters are.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I don't even think care what I do.
Yeah.
The other one for me is Sula by Toni Morrison, which I love. I mean, I love that book, and I've probably read it 10 or 15 times, but I read it in high school for the first time. Again, thought it was like kind of a cool story about making cool but bad decisions. And, oh my God. Oh, it's just crushing. Yeah, anyway, I guess I can no longer see novels as anything but tragedies.
Well, I mean, that opens up a whole series of questions I want to ask you. Let me start by saying one of the reasons I wanted to bring up Salinger is that in your novels, it seems that reading, whether fictional books, let's say An Imperial Affliction, or actual books, Seymour An Introduction, the General and His Labyrinth, etc., play important, not just thematic, but plot components. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if you can talk a bit about the importance of books as narrative, in constructing your narratives.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think that books are things that are made by individuals that, like, generally the way that we think of books is like somebody usually dead, usually white, usually male, like living in an ivory tower, writes this work of genius that comes out of his, you know, like, there's a great line in Portrait of the Artist of the Young Man where he says that he's going to, like, you know, forge the uncreated conscience of his race in the smithy of his soul. That's not how. First off, I don't think that's how the uncreated conscience of a race gets forged. But besides that, I also don't think that's how a book actually comes into being. I think a book is part of like a massive network. When I think of what genre is, I think of this like huge, the way that stories and people are just intertwined, and the way that everything can feed into a story. And so when I'm writing a book, I think of it as a book. I don't think of it as like, I don't like close my eyes and like see real life. And that maybe is not to the credit of my books, but that's just the way that I've always written. And so I see it in the context of other books, you know, usually better books. Because there's no use writing writing about the worst, the bad ones. So, I think about the kinds of books that these characters would love, and that's always for me one of the defining ways of imagining a character, because I know that I'm imagining a character. I know that I'm imagining a work of fiction, so what kinds of fictions would this fiction like is a really interesting question to me.
So you're a person who goes into someone's house and first looks at the books on their shelf.
Oh my God, yeah. It's like, that's all you need to know.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
When we bought our house, actually, in 2007 in Indianapolis, the people, I liked their books.
Is that why you bought the house?
Pretty much. They had so many bookshelves, and first off, that was a selling point. And I was like, these are smart, interesting people in Indiana. We can just kind of, we can just assume their lives. That was kind of my experience.
Yeah, no. I've never, the requirement for me is always the house has to have long stretches of uninterrupted wall space so we can put up all the books. I'm glad you brought up this question of writing books. I wanted to follow up on what you said about you're not imagining the books in real life, but you're imagining sort of the books in this landscape of the book. I wonder, can you talk a little bit more about what that means?
Yeah, I don't think I don't think that I don't imagine myself as like writing a book. Like for me, writing a book is a collaboration with my wife, and it's a collaboration with my editor, certainly Jim Strasgable, who's published all of my books, worked with me for 10 years, and one of my closest friends. Like, it's a collaboration with the people who are going to design the book, create the way that it's read, the people who copy edit it, and tell me that it was Magritte who did Cecina Causing Peak, not the artist I initially thought it was, things like that. It's a huge collaboration, but then there's also the collaboration of the person who first showed me Cecina Causing Peak, and the person who created that work, and this sort of the collaboration of inventing the genre of the star-crossed lovers, and the collaboration of which occurred over millennia and was done not really by individuals, but in collective storytelling, and it's to think of it as to try to separate it, to try to individualize it. And I know that in America we're obsessed with individualism and individualizing, but like to try to individualize a novel seems very problematic to me, because all of them, the good ones and the bad ones, were kind of in some way made by all of us. Like we were all, everything that we were doing artistically, feeds into the work that we're doing now. And I prefer to think of it that way, partly because it makes less pressure on me. Like it doesn't mean that I have to do something extraordinary. I just have to repackage stuff that other people have already made, basically.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen.